Hey everybody, today we are going to be talking about movies that maybe we had a fondness for when we were younger, but the older that we get, it doesn't seem to age that well for us. I've done many of these topic videos, and I've done a couple, I think, on this particular subject, and I don't know, I just think it's very interesting what movies tend to feel really dated and the ones that actually feel timeless. Also, it just depends on how you grow up yourself, your own personal story. Something that resonated with you at one point in your life, later on it may not. And it's often the ones that where you return at different points in your life and it always means something. Those are the ones that I tend to think are more powerful or more complex. We will start with the first one. I do hate when people say a movie hasn't aged well because most of the time it's someone with ADD or a perpetually offended curmudgeon. So I saw several people with that particular response, that type of response. And I find that interesting just because I think there is something to saying a movie didn't age well, like I said at the beginning of this video, talking about whether things feel dated or timeless. I think certain artists can get really flustered or too in their own headspace and they lack perspective, and often that can reflect in the art. And sometimes you can look back at it later and go, oh my God, what was I thinking? I could have done that so much better. Absolutely, in those instances, I think it doesn't age well. Totally applies. Certain subjects and controversies come in and out of style, in and out of fashion, so sometimes they're going to apply to a movie more intensely than it might at other times. So yeah, all of these fluctuating things about time, I think it affects absolutely the way that you view the films. Okay, so next one is going to be an actual response, like a movie response. The Blind Side. With everything that's come out about the Tuohy family, Blind Side has aged like milk in the sun. That would imply that the movie was good to begin with, and it wasn't good. It wasn't good at all. It was one of those things I could see the writing on the wall. I remember seeing that film in theaters. Yes, I saw it in theaters. I've never really walked out of a movie, I don't think, but I came really close to walking out of that one. I found it uncomfortable. I found it schmaltzy. I found it watered down. Just one of those sugary, sweet, pandery, Hallmark-type movies that is ultimately quite reductive about the subject that it is discussing. But the film also just has very strange humor in it and writing. It gets very awkward, and some of the moments continue to haunt me, and I've only seen the film one time. But yeah, when I think of movies like The Blind Side, I actually lump that in with movies like The Help, which came out, I think, in like 2011. Really close together, those two. But they both just have this warm, kind of glowy fakeness to them. But it's just propaganda. And I don't mind it if propaganda is done well, but both of these films just have a very uncomfortable vibe to them. I remember tonally feeling like, ugh. But what you're saying here, everything that came out about the Tuohy family, now that, I find that to be separate so far as, it doesn't concern the movie. And also, we really don't know the situation behind that. It's like, did Michael Oher kind of exploit the family? Is he using this more for attention and money? Or is he getting justice for something that he deserves to get justice for? It's a really kind of complicated thing. I think I don't know a lot about it. Like I was saying, the movie felt incredibly reductive. Sandra Bullock being the savior to this helpless young boy, and you'd have to think that somebody coming into the family in that way would create, a little bit of tension. The family dynamic does change in a way that's going to be a little bit complicated. And obviously the results are what we see here in reality. And I think to myself, I would have liked to see more of that in the actual movie. I would have liked to see difficulties, struggles. But yes, I think The Blind Side, and again, movies like The Help, I think that they're the types of movies where they capitalize on a certain moment in time and they are successful in that time period, and then you watch it like 4 years later and you're like, what was that? The 2009 reboot of Star Trek. It was entertaining as a sci-fi film, but it was disappointing as a Star Trek film. Yeah, I mean, I think most people agree with that. It wasn't Star Trek. They basically turned Star Trek into Star Wars because, that type of cerebral sci-fi wasn't a great selling point at the time, especially when you have a franchise like that is very marketable. You needed a big audience. You needed accessibility. So it made sense why they're kind of dumbing it down and making it more like a space opera. I have to say, I find the new Star Trek films very interesting because clearly, with the 2009 reboot, they had a real intent. It was clear they had an idea of what they were doing. They probably wanted to do, I don't know, I'm guessing a trilogy, a series of films with this new cast. And I feel like it just completely lost its way. It almost felt like it was making the story up as it went along once we got past the first film. The first film, like it or not, it's fairly cohesive. It's not a bad film. It is very J.J. Abrams, so it's not, great filmmaking or anything like that. But I don't know. I found it to be solid at the time. It's been a while since I've seen it. But then the second film was just a train wreck, especially in the third act. And then I remember seeing the third film, came out in like 2016, and it was very, very forgettable. It almost felt like an afterthought. It was very Star Trek Nemesis kind of, wow, okay, so that's how we're going to close this out. But it almost feels like it just kind of ran into the Star Wars trilogy that hadn't come out yet. But once it did, it was like, move over, Star Trek, we have new things to focus on. And it just felt kind of strange. Again, I don't think we need two Star Wars trilogies. And again, Star Trek became kind of Star Wars. I have seen every single Star Trek film, and I can tell you that most of them are bad. I would say the ones that are the best are the ones from the original trilogy, but it makes sense because of the types of movies you could make at that time. But I could talk about Star Trek forever. I love Star Trek. Horrible Bosses. I remember liking it when it came out. I was 12, 13 at the time, and I snuck into the theater, LOL. But when I got older, the comedy is just not for me. It's too frat boyish humor, and I just outgrew that. Plus, the subplot with Charlie Day being sexually harassed by Jennifer Aniston as a joke just rubs me the wrong way, to where I just feel creeped out. I love that part. I thought it was hilarious. I like the kind of subversive, it's like, oh, the woman is the horn dog. The woman is coming on to the man in a really disturbing way. Especially when you have somebody like Jennifer Aniston in the part. I think she's just so funny. She shows her chops here. And it's one of those situations, if you have the right types of actors, the right types of comedy chops, you can take something that is controversial and that could be maybe offensive or whatever, and it's not at all. And I really think that's the case for Horrible Bosses. I should say, I can agree with a lot of what you're saying here. I don't think Horrible Bosses is a great movie, but I have gone on record as saying, it is a guilty pleasure for me. I've seen it maybe like 10, 15 times. I even watched it over Christmas because, again, it's like this weird comfort movie for me. Truly what holds it together is the talent, the ensemble, and having the, your three stooges, Sudeikis and Bateman and Day. They all work really well together. I think they all balance each other out, and they all have very distinct personalities. The bit parts like, Jamie Foxx and Kevin Spacey, there's just a lot of really good stuff there. It's just a real disappointing idea that, it's such a cynical premise. It's a movie about all these guys who are wanting to kill their bosses. And it's very like modern day existentialist. And it just felt like a wasted opportunity. It's like, if you're going to have a premise, again, that is bold and cynical like this, really go for it and plunge. Make it dark. See how far you can go. I guess I was wanting something more like Observe and Report, Seth Rogen's Observe and Report. Now that's a film that is cynical and truly dark, where you're not sure whether or not you should be laughing, whereas I find Horrible Bosses way too safe. But on a very basic level, if you just want to laugh, screwball, basic comedy, SNL sketch type of stuff, maybe Horrible Bosses will be for you, but again, it is so guilty pleasure for me. I actually don't think it ages that poorly, but I can see what you're saying at the same time. Like I was saying, I want it to go further. I want it to be more dark. Had it plunged into that territory, I think that this film would have aged really well. I think we probably would still be talking about it. It would have had legs. Ted. Too many jokes about one-time celebrities that everybody forgot about by now. Well, I mean, that's just Seth MacFarlane. That's Seth MacFarlane's type of humor. Sometimes it works pretty well, I would say. Like, I don't dislike Family Guy fully. I think the earlier seasons were actually pretty okay. Obviously, there's a major lack of consistency by design. It's very kind of vaudevillian in its style of humor. And again, there is something to it, but at the same time, I've always found his style of humor to be lazy. Like, it's like he's hiding behind a lot of the references, or like he's going for all of these, just like these quick cutaway skits, because again, they are easy. It keeps him from having to really search. I think with Ted, it's a solid script. I think the characters are fairly likable for the most part. But yeah, it goes into a really standard third act. And yeah, I remember seeing it at the time and thinking, this is just very kind of Family Guy. Probably shouldn't say this, but there's something about Seth MacFarlane's humor where I think he's just been in Hollywood too long, and he's become too elitist, that he is so in this bubble. He is so out of touch. And it feels as though he feels like he's better than everybody. There's like a snark to him. It's like, oh, I'm more sophisticated than the rest of you just because I listened to Frank Sinatra. And I guess I could forgive that if there was a little bit more punch in the material. There was more spunk, and he was actually really giving it. Like, I think about South Park. I'm sorry, I'm a huge South Park fan, and I feel like that is the example of when you can take celebrities, whether they were one-time celebrities or celebrities that we always remember, and it works. But I think that's because South Park isn't relying on gags so much. It's like anytime they're making a celebrity reference, they're using it to make a larger point about something. Whereas I don't think that's the case necessarily with Family Guy or Ted. And truly, this is the difference. This is why I think the movies by Matt and Trey Parker age so well. The South Park movie, Team America, World Police, stuff like Ted, Million Ways to Die in the West, they just don't hold up. But yes, those are some of the answers to your questions. And again, we'll do another topic video at some point. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. I'm going to plug my website. As always, it is deepfocuslens.com. I'm an artist. I do commission portraits and I sell prints of my work. If that is something that you're interested in, you can always go to the website below. And if you have a question about a commission or a print, you can always email me. My email is in the description box below as well. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to my patrons who are fantastic. Guys, thank you so much for your support and welcome to all the new members. If you are interested in supporting, the link for that is below, as well as the rest of my social media information. You can watch my videos here and you can subscribe if you'd like. Catch you next time.